It's proper heath with proper heathland plants. So it's been heath, millennia, since the Ice Age basically. Because some places were heath that became heath later through human activity, so they didn't have the proper flora that heath would have. But when it's been heath since the Ice Age, it's a completely different set of plants grow on it. But in my area, there's a chalk pit, and the chalk pit was enclosed, and the grass at the top where they didn't take the chalk out contained all the original flora. When they took the chalk out, it left all this bare surface which was colonised by all the rarities, and then over time it got scrubbed up and whatever, and the gun club took it on, and the gun club, without talking to anyone, got a bulldozer and scraped the whole lot off again to create a flat area to shoot in.
Not good.
No, but now the richest area with all the best things is where the gun club scraped it. So here they've done a scrape. The gorse is normally pineapple scented. And again, you can see they're managing it by cutting it so it never gets too high. For some things like the big gorse to nest in, but the low gorse to hunt in. And there's a double gorse, and only once ever has there been a pale yellow one. And I think it all seems to have gone now. So there's potential for a pale yellow one. People walk and they create mud. The rain comes and washes the mud. But if enough people walk over enough centuries and the mud is washed away over enough centuries, the path gets worn down. And because we're walking on sand, the path is always being worn down. So where people walk the whole time, you get this what's called a holloway. So it just wears its way into the landscape. But it can only happen on certain soils which are soft and sandy, or otherwise very soft. So as we're coming down off the driest part, we can get holly, because the holly won't grow on the driest part, because holly needs constant moisture to grow properly. So as we come down into this area here, then we start getting the holly. And of course, because it's raised up and near the sea, a lot of the water coming off the sea will be deposited. There's a bit too much phosphorus going on. This Prima spinosa, or sloe, it's tiny flowered. So it's probably the real wild one, because it's really tiny flowered and very fine branched.
What's
that? That's sloe. But I'd say this is the genuine British wild one. It's not an introduction, so that would say more that this was an ancient site that people hadn't planted.
Well, it's an ancient tree.
Yes, maybe 200-300. Something like that tree, can you see it's got 3 or 4 stems? Now that would be, coming on for 1,000 years old. And there's another one here. Again, you can see there's almost a ring of stems. Again, sort of, let's say 500, 700,000 years old. And of course, when they're cut all the time like that, in effect, you're kind of bonsaiing them, so they're lasting a lot longer, surviving a lot longer than if they just grew naturally. So you're kind of prolonging their life by cutting them repeatedly. You see, these are hawthorns that have been repeatedly cut. There's one through there. Look at the box up there, that might be an owl box, a big box above your head. almost a kind of lazy summer fly noise, isn't it?
It is.
So it's really quite warm. I'm only just in a t-shirt.
There's lots of microclimates down here with some highs.
Because this dip was going to be warmer, isn't it, all the way through. And we've got the sunny bank this side.
This is an interesting one here.
This plant here, this plant is not a native plant, and it was probably introduced by the monks at some point or other. It's edible, you can eat the roots, although I'm not going to tell you it's really tasty. It's a bit like eating soap. It's called Smyrnium olisacrum, or Alexander's, so the common name is Alexander's. And it used to be a very rare thing, only found around monastery sites or in really unusual places on the coast. So it was a rare thing everywhere. And it's just now spread and spread and spread, partly through climate change and partly through it's just a really good adventurous species that likes to spread. So you're going to find it all over the place. So Smyrnium olisacrum, and it is edible and it tastes like celery, but the root, as I say, tastes like soap. With a flower. And you can see the really big hood above, which is totally green. So Lords and Ladies is the common name. And then you can see the spadix, which points up, which is purple in the middle. And the spadix is actually hot and it attracts flies. And also the flower stinks like rotting flesh, so it attracts flies. And what the flies do is they go to the spadix and then they go down into a chamber down here. And once they've gone down into the chamber, they can't escape. If you go into the middle of the flower, you'll see there's a ring of hairs. So the flies get down past the ring of hairs into the chamber below and they can't escape. So they buzz round and round and round and round and pollinate the plant. And eventually the hairs decay away and the fly can escape and go on and pollinate the next plant. So it's a little way of trapping the fly to get the pollination done. It's called Alkane, or Pentaglottis sempervirens, and it's definitely a human introduction. The roots are used for dyeing and they'll produce a reddy brown colour when they're used to dye wool and other fabrics. So it was a useful plant at one time, but now it's become an absolutely appalling invasive weed and just spreads everywhere. Lovely blue flowers, but don't let it seed because it will take over. And as you can see, the leaf often varies, so they can be plain green or they can be finely silver spotted like that. So that's quite common variation on this particular plant. And very, very rarely you get a white flowered one, but really incredibly rarely. Okay, so this is Petasites fragrans, or winter heliotrope. It has the most wonderfully scented pale pinky purple flowers in the winter. Absolutely fantastic scent. It is incredibly invasive, as you can see, and doesn't flower well unless it's in full sun. It originally comes from countries like Morocco and Algeria, and was introduced here and has proven to be hardy enough, but in the right place. But it is a fantastic thing, but don't let it escape. And it's one of the sweetest scented flowers in the winter. It's absolutely fantastic. Primroses. Now, so these are primroses, but when I look at this primrose, I can tell you that it's not a British native one. If you look carefully into the centre of the flower, the eye is star-shaped and quite a rich yellowy orange colour. And in general, plants with that character are not native ones, they're ones that have escaped or interbred with other ones. And if you pan slowly down here, you'll find that here is a lovely pinky one, which tells exactly what I was saying. What I was saying, it's not native. Native ones are never pink, but the genetic character of having this starry orange centre up here, it tells me that's not a native primrose. It might have hybridised with one, but it's definitely not a native. And this here, this is forget-me-not. So it's Myosotis, and there's lots of different species. There are quite a lot of British species, but mostly they've got really tiny little squinny flowers and not very exciting and not very interesting. And this is almost certainly an alien species which has been selected by gardeners for having much richer, bluer flowers and doing really well at this time of year. I can't tell you what the Latin is, sorry. This piece here, this is Potentilla sterilis, or barren strawberry. The sterilist doesn't mean to say that it's sterile. Of course it isn't sterile, it seeds like crazy, but it doesn't have strawberries, and therefore it's barren because it just doesn't have strawberries, although it looks exactly like a strawberry. And it's a very common native plant on sunny dry banks, usually white flowered. Very rarely you can get a pink flowered one or a purple leaved one, but it's nice to see it here. Oh my god. This has totally changed. I wonder what the hell they're doing here. Access point 119. Do you think this is a new pipeline for something or other? Look, it's going through here, over here.
Aren't they building a huge water pipeline from the north of England down to the south of England?
I don't know, but this is all completely new. So we used to walk, we used to go into that field and walk along inside. I think there's, you can still just see where we walk there. We used to go inside the field and along rather than being on the road. So we'll see if we can get through where those two cones are.
Yeah.
This is, I haven't seen any of this. Hornsea onshore cabling works. So this is where they're taking the power from the windmills in the North Sea and bringing it inland and running it overland. There's a lot of debate about this, whether all the cabling should be under the sea or whether it should be on the land. Because so many campaigners think it should be in the sea and not be doing all this environmental damage here.
Well, it's good to see that they've left the pedestrian path.
Yeah. When we walk into this piece of land here, it's roughly rectangular, and it seems to me that at one time it must have been somebody's allotment. And if we walk further down onto the land, you'll see bunches of daffodils planted, you'll see summer snowflake, which is Leucojum eastivum, planted almost as if it was in a row. And the docks, you see, if you look at the docks here, they're a kind of dock that grows in land that's been cultivated, so they're not a dock that necessarily grows somewhere in wild areas. So I think this was an allotment. But have a look at this. This is summer snowflake or Leucojum eastivum. There's some very good flowers over there. We've got some good ones there. And then you look at the narcissi. So there's a very large yellow one here which is going over, which is almost certainly King Alfred. And then if you look here, there's the most beautiful Rosetta type, which is a variety called Compressus. Absolutely wonderfully beautiful, incredibly sweetly scented. It's the most beautiful flower, sweetly scented, very hardy, very easy to grow, and certainly a sign that this was an allotment. And then if we walk further, a little bit further down here, we can see some more narcissi, again almost as if they're in a row. And this is a hybrid with a species called Poeticus. So it's not Poeticus itself, it's a hybrid of Poeticus, which has got these very broad white outer petals. And if you look carefully, there's a darker ring around the corona of the flower. So there's this dark ring, and that's both those characters come from Poeticus, and also it would be very sweetly scented. A little bit further over here, we've got another Leucojum, but we've also got Muscari. So this is Muscari or Great Hyacinth. Again, another very commonly cultivated plant, and one that often escapes into the wild. And here it is, just one of them, but I'm sure if you walked around a bit more we'd find more of them. And this little stream is glorious. Really clean, fresh water. Celandines again.
Right. What's in the water?
That is all. It's called hang on. It's willow herb, but it's one that's called. It's not rosebay. It's codlins and cream. But the reason I stopped here was because see, one of those is slightly paler, but it could be that it's just going over, because they go paler as they're going over. And the interesting thing about this particular plant, as you walk along here, is that there's two different subspecies of Ficaria verna, and this is the better behaved, slower spreading one, as opposed to the really weedy, seedy, horrible one. I'm sure they do drive down to the nature reserve. So there's a proper nature reserve at the bottom. This ranunculus ficaria or celandine is much more what I'd expect to find in this kind of locality. That is to say, it's the really weedy one, which is Ficaria vernus subspecies bulbilifera, and it just makes thousands of little bulbils and spreads everywhere. And it's not the same as the one we just saw up the top there, which is much more restrained. If you look at the leaves over here, there's no purple marking in the leaf, and that tells us it's the weedy seedy one. Whereas you look at the one we had earlier on, there were lovely purple markings in the leaf, and that tells us it's the better behaved one. For this power line, God, that's incredible. They just raked the countryside, haven't they? Pushed it all the way through.
Yeah.
But if you come a bit further and look this way, then you're looking at the original landscape of the terminal moraine of the glacier. You can see with the bracken all over it, very acid soil, very high, very dry, you know, totally unfarmed, you know, unlooked after as really as it should be. But obviously people have been removing trees obviously over the centuries. Okay, now I've suddenly seen a clump of kingcups or marsh marigold, which is Caltha palustris. If we go a little bit further forward and look here, one of the glorious yellow flowers of spring, always growing in really, really damp areas. Whether this is a genuine native one or not is another matter, because there's two species. There's the real Caltha palustris, which is the British one, which is normally smaller than this, and this is a very big, vigorous looking thing, which may mean it's Caltha polypetala, which is an introduced one. But it's still really nice to see it, very cheering, just coming into flower now, and with its feet in the water. Okay, so this plant here is Herb Robert, or Geranium robertianum. Very, very strongly scented. Some people don't like it, some people don't mind. Found widespread all over the UK and almost certainly native, but it's a really, really weedy plant. It's the sort of thing that you need to enjoy when you're out on a walk like this, but in your own garden it can be an absolute menace. So it's Geranium robertianum, and if you move slightly to the right, you can see shoots of hops coming up again. Now, hops love this kind of damp condition. They really like growing in this part of the world where there's lots of water underfoot, and you don't really find them in dry places at all. They need this damp. Look up to that side. You look at the way the land is. That is a tumulus. So it's a human grave site with a raised mound in the middle with a few trees on it, and it's overlooking the sea, almost at the top of the highest hill. And there would have been many tumuli around here, but once they invented steam ploughs, they started to plough them all out, and there's actually very few left. So it's interesting to see that there's one left there. So this stream goes down to essentially what you'd call a dune slack. So the dunes form a line, and the water collects behind that line to make lakes, and the lakes that are there are called dune slacks, and they're very, very good for nature. All sorts of birds and other things love them.
These lakes are called what?
These are dune slacks. So before the gravel ridge appeared, if you imagine there was a time when there wasn't a gravel ridge, the water would have run down from the land and directly into the sea. But as the dune line or gravel line has grown, the progress of the water is impeded, and it forms these very wet areas just inside the dunes, which are called dune slacks. And sometimes, mostly the water is fresh, but sometimes it can be brackish with a bit of salt in it. So the species of birds and animals that live in it are quite different from in other places. But you know, they've I would imagine they've rather deliberately encouraged or increased the dune slacks because they are so good for wildlife.
And we've had an awful amount of rain in the last few months.
It's the real, genuine British original sloe with the little tiny flowers and the tiny berries. Very, very spiny and very freely running. So it's the genuine one. So we're in an area with genuine wild plants that things haven't been put into. Those plants that are up the top there. Well, let's walk into this bit.
Yeah.
tell me what you want. Okay, so this start here, have a look at this. I know it's very boring, it's not really very interesting. Just a little green thing like that. It doesn't really look very exciting. But this is Beta maritima, so it's sea beet. And it's related to beetroot, to sugar beet, to the Swiss chard and all those plants that we eat. So it's edible, but it's very, very tough. So that's Beta maritima or sea beet. It does flower, but they're sort of long spikes of relatively boring green flowers. But it's a classic plant from these shingle ridges. And we'll see a few more shingle ridge plants in a minute. So there could be sea holly, but it's the wrong time of year. So they're probably not here. One we are going to see is this thing up here.
This is where the camera just falls backwards.
This is where the dog is really useful. So this thing is Glaucium corniculatum or sea poppy. There's a red variety corniculatum and there's a yellow variety flavum, but at this time of year we can't tell which is which. And again, it's a classic plant of these gravel ridges, and it's in the poppy family, definitely related to poppies, but not particularly easy to grow in normal garden conditions. But you can see here it's very well established.
Wow.
So further that way is Blakeney. Way down there. Just about to see Blakeney.
Yeah.
Where you see the cliff edge, and you see the two ridges just beyond the far distance from where the cliff ends. That's Blakeney and the Glaven. And then this way is Weybourne. Hey, look at, you can see the wind farm by eye.
Yeah, I can see it. Massive.
Huge. There's thousands of them out there.
That's RAF Weybourne.
So as I know, we can struggle along the top of the gravel ridge, or we can go on the path that's there. But sooner or later, that path runs out, and we're on gravel.
We might as well walk on the
we might as
beach.
well just stay on the gravel. Yeah. On the beach, we just look at a little random bit of stonage. Where you see the dark flint, because these are flint pebbles that have been worn, these are all flint pebbles that come from the chalk period. So anything over what I think is 50 million years ago, and they were fossilised sponges essentially laid down in layers in the chalk. When you look again at the brown ones are chert. And chert is flint, so it's the same material, but this chert was laid down in the Triassic period during the limestone era. And the two different kinds of flint have got mixed together on the beach as they've been eroded out and moved around by the sea. See how the gravel is imposing itself on what was here before. So the gravel, all those cliffs are being eroded by the gravel damaging the bottom of the cliffs. It's all being eroded, and then the gravel's being deposited, and you can see it's gradually covering up whatever was here before. Okay, so what we've got here, superficially it looks like a piece of excreta or possibly a piece of coal, but when we look at it more closely we can see that it's actually wood, and this wood is derived from a peat bed layer that was laid down about 100,000 years ago, when this whole part of the world was a massive estuary of the River Rhine. And gradually, as the cliffs are being eroded in Haysborough, Cromer and all the other places, this peaty layer is being exposed, and then it's being washed and broken up, and you can see how crumbly this is, and it will soon degrade. And this black material, the black comes from the peat, but it's also very, very full of iron. And if you try and take this out and dry it out too much, it would just probably disintegrate anyway and fall to pieces.
How old?
About 100,000 years old. I think think it's part of a shark.
Oh, shark, yeah.
Something like that. So this is the old soil level, and then there's the cliff, and then there's the view.
Oh, what?
This is probably what they were looking at. It's ermine moth caterpillars.
Ermine moth caterpillars.
Yeah, just they have this silk.
Oh look, they're moving.
They have a silk cage, and as they eat and they devour and they spread, they take the silk with them. So you see these silken webs all over the hedges. Look up, look up. Look, there's hundreds of them all through, and they are devastating. They'll completely demolish these brambles.
Oh dear.
But on the other hand, the brambles are really a noxious, appalling weed here anyway. Because it should be fine dune flora.
Yeah.
Brambles taking over.
So this is gorse.
Yeah. But much reduced in height.
Yeah.
So when we look at the beach, we see this sea moving, we see the waves crashing on the shore, we see all this activity. But as you go further out, all the activity is only in the top layer of the sea, in the top 3 feet of the sea. And below, it's very, very calm, cool and stable, with lots and lots of weeds, seaweeds and corals maybe, and sponges. And that's where the whelks live. They live in this kind of miniature underground or undersea forest. And they lay their eggs there, and only when there's a storm, so these whelk egg cases get washed up or blown up. Apes in the military base. It's probably gladiolus byzantinus.
Maybe over the years they planted them on the base, and it's just.
Had an allotment again, or a little beach cabin. And they had a beach cabin, and they planted it full of plants, and the military moved it when they came in bluebells. The military moved it when they came in, and the beach huts, you know, there's no trace of it remaining. People did, they had a beach hut, they were territorial, they planted things around it. I mean, look at Derek Jarman's cabin or whatever it is. So these are some of the sponges that form that miniature forest under the sea, where the sea is relatively shallow and the water doesn't move very much. You can get these amazing sponge forests. They're all only about 6 to 8 inches high, and there's dozens and dozens of species, all a little bit different from each other. So it doesn't look like a sponge, but it definitely is.
Today for a kite. You don't see kites nowadays, do you?
You don't. It used to be a real thing, didn't it? And you almost never see them. But in other cultures they're still very popular. But in ours they seem to disappear. You can make out of anything. You know, plastic bags, you know, you can make a kite out of it.
Is that the village of Weybourne? Yeah. Oh, choo-choo train! Where's the railway line?
It runs down along there because it's going to Holt.
Yeah.
And so it's this side of the, you see the ridge, which is the moraine?
Yeah.
It's this side of that.
And you say we're going to walk by the railway line?
Well, we'll make a decision.
Lovely day again. And it gets warmer without that wind.
So this is a plant called ground ivy, or Glaucoma hederaceae, and it's the most beautiful purple flowered ground cover in the early spring. It can vary in shade, so in some places you can find different shades of leaf colour and different shades of flower colour, and it is often grown in gardens, but the form that's grown in gardens is the variegated leaved one, and it's sold as a bedding plant, and you can buy it in all good garden centres. But the wild one is absolutely beautiful, and there are white flowered forms and pink flowered forms that you can get, and one or two odd variegated ones. So it's ground ivy or Glaucoma hederaceae. Okay, this is Greater Periwinkle or Vinca major. It's not native, it's native to southern Europe, and it's got a huge range, you know, Portugal, Spain, Italy, most of the southern Mediterranean, and varies all the way across its range. Large blue flowers, very attractive, good early flower, very invasive, and often a garden escape where it's sort of naturalised itself and spread here and there. It is poisonous. It may or may not have had a medicinal use, but I don't know what it was. But it's certainly a very common plant, escaped from gardens. It's Alexander's again, Smyrnium ulisatrum, but it's a golden leaf one.
Nice.
This is Symphytum orientale. It's the most beautiful white flowered symphytum or comfrey. So it's a white flowered comfrey, sometimes called Russian comfrey, and beautiful white flowers. Its virtue is that it will grow in the most appalling, horrible dry shade. So as a garden plant, if you've got the most appalling conditions and nothing else will do, this will do. Its vice is definitely that it seeds everywhere and becomes a menace. But you know, sometimes it's the right plant for you. In the right spot, you know, horrible dry shade, and a beautiful white flower. So it's obviously just sort of running its way down from the village, gradually spreading about. It is beautiful, but it's just yeah, there's actually a sign up there saying Kelling Heath.
Yeah.
So we're obviously going left.
There's no pavement on that side.
Well, that would be a good photo to put into the... Hey! Yeah, be careful.
It's like the railway children. Here it is.
If you're too close to it, you won't get such a good shot. Somewhere around there, don't you? And look at the primroses on the other side. Yeah, it's coming. I can see it. It's coming. Stop. Coming.
I know, I saw those. This reminds me of being a kid back in Harrogate, watching the London Pullman leave. So how do we get on the path?
Well, we go past these gardens.
Yeah.
And then it's absolutely sharp right. And the path runs along above the railway. Do you know this plant? This one?
Which one?
That one. You have to sort of pinch it a little bit and smell it. Well, take it, take it.
It's not a... Looks like a thorn.
It's a tansy. Tansy. So it's used as a herb. I'm not sure what its proper use is, but it's a strewing herb. So basically you have it on the floor of your house and you walk about on it, and it makes the house smell nice. So when you had rush matting, because we grew up with rush matting. Did you have rush matting as a child? We had rush matting, and you just have the sweet smelling things underneath the rush matting.
Yeah.
And then you walk about on it and you get a lovely sense to walk about. And then when the rush matting is too filthy, dirty, whatever, you roll it all up and put it on the fire.
Yeah.
Or out in the garden to compost or something like that. It's all biodegradable.
Lots of habitats today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing for habitat too. Variable. We've been through everything from ancient woods, marshes, the heath. We've been through the beach. We've been through the whole lot.
And Bess hasn't flagged once.
That's all wild garlic.
Where?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I've got two different golden ones and one which has got green leaves but white flower stems. So if you, and I've seen a photograph that somebody had of one with a beautiful white stripe down the middle of every leaf,
Yeah.
but it was growing in the bottom of the wall.
You can smell it.
Yeah, you can talk about wild garlic because it's one of your...
Well, when I was at school in North Yorkshire, it was in every single wood.
Absolutely, yeah. But here it must be damp.
Yeah.
Because most other woods have been too dry, there's none of it. But here because it's damp. I don't know in my wood, but it's not a wood lush as this. Oh look there,
Yeah.
several flowers together.
Celandine.
This is all mercury again.
I can hear a train.
The tractor buzzing.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the railway again. You might get another one if you're lucky. That's the whistle. Bluebells. So if we've got bluebells and mercury and ramsons, wild garlic, we're definitely in ancient wood. No two ways about it.
I think it's another one because I could hear the tracks rattling.
Well, you'll get a good upward shot from that corner, won't you? Again, this should be good at bluebell time because these are proper bluebells.
Yeah.
I look. Wood sorrel. Little tiny white flowers. And sort of acid leaves which you can eat, very very tasty leaves. We could actually pick some now if you wanted. No, and they're normally white, so it's wood sorrel or acetosella, sorry, Oxalis acetosella, and this dark pink flowered form as well.
Oh, it's the railway station. Wow. I hope the path goes over this side.
You hope what, sorry?
The path goes on the other side.
It must.
Right. Yes, it does.
Have we done it? You only want crossing point.
Oh, I can hear a train. Can you hear a train?
Yeah, I heard a whistle. Right now, that'd be a good view.
Yeah.
Can you hear it?
Yeah. What a climb.
What a view.
I
I hope
know.
you can get some of that view in. You're going to do like a panorama.
View though.
That's fantastic view, isn't it?
That's the windmill on my
Yeah.
picture, isn't it?
Yeah, we saw that windmill from totally the other direction, from the beach as we walked up. And then you can see the square tower of the church. You walk through that. The traffic noise here. Beautiful place, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like England gone.
Yeah, like
Bye.
it was, yeah. Hey, he's going to get it. He's going to get a shot. Just make sure your GoPro doesn't run out of battery.
Oh, choo-choo train! This reminds me of standing on the station at Harrogate. Is he going to whistle? We wave at him.
Maybe you try, but your GoPro will be
Oh, and the steam! Oh, it's very old carriages as well.
The other one had modern carriages, this has got the old one down. And the same, the engine at the front instead of pulling it, so it was actually really dry. But people don't really like white yellows.
I don't mind, I like coreopsis.
I don't yellow would be good. I've got a new coreopsis, which I'm going to start populating.
I'll get it for you. Cheers. Home leg,
Yeah.
I think.
I think this one
As long as we don't go the wrong way.
runs straight.
Yeah.
Uh,
What a mess.
not that far, and then we have to do a jink to the left, and that gets us back to the car park. You put it on your...
I have, you know. She's not telling us what to do.
You turned it off.
I know. Well, I'm recording it rather than following her.
Yeah, because it's stupid having her in the recording.
Yeah. Well, it isn't because it's a Komoot route.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if you're trying to do whatever, you don't really want a silly woman to give you instructions on how to get somewhere.
How are you doing, Bert? Doesn't look it. Old oak there.
Oh yeah. It's not an oak.
Isn't it?
No, it's a very ancient birch, I think.
All right.
Oaks wouldn't be in leaf yet. It's an amazing shape, isn't it?
Yeah.